One of the central themes in Ibn Arabi's teachings is the nature of death, a subject that often evokes fear and uncertainty in the hearts of many. However, Ibn Arabi viewed death not as an end, but as a passage, a transformative journey that is intimately tied to the nature of existence itself. Through his mystical and philosophical writings, especially in his seminal work, Fusus al-Hikam, The Bezels of Wisdom, he offers us insights into the mysteries of life and death, challenging conventional views and urging us to see death not as a cessation, but a return. The nature of death, a return to the divine. Ibn Arabi's perspective on death begins with a radical idea. Death is not the cessation of life, but a reunion with the source of all being. He said, "Death is not a disappearance, but a return to the origin from which the soul has emerged." In this view, death is not something to fear, but something that should be embraced, for it is the soul's return to its ultimate home, God. Unlike the common view of death as a final and irreversible end, Ibn Arabi encouraged his followers to understand death as a transition. He believed that the soul is eternal and that the physical body is merely a temporary vessel through which the soul experiences the world. The soul, in its essence, is not bound by the limitations of time and space, and death is simply the moment when the soul is liberated from the body, returning to its divine origin. This idea resonates deeply within the Sufi tradition, which teaches that the soul's purpose is to experience the world, grow spiritually, and eventually return to the divine. Ibn Arabi's teachings suggest that death, rather than being an unfortunate event, is a glorious return, a reunion with the source of all life. By perceiving death as this return, we can begin to understand its true meaning and embrace it with a sense of peace rather than fear. The barzakh, the intermediate realm. But what happens after death? Ibn Arabi presents the concept of the barzakh, the intermediate realm that exists between life and the afterlife. According to his teachings, the barzakh is a state where the soul lingers after death, awaiting the final judgment. In Fusus al-Hikam, he wrote, "The barzakh is the realm of waiting, neither heaven nor hell, but a space where the soul experiences the consequences of its actions, yet is not yet fully immersed in the eternal realities of the afterlife." This intermediate state is neither a place of ultimate bliss nor eternal suffering. Instead, it is a space where the soul is in a suspended state of reflection, rotting the fruits of its earthly deeds. It is a moment of reckoning, where the soul comes face to face with the results of its life's actions. The barzakh serves as a temporary stage before the soul's final destiny is decided, whether it will be destined for paradise or a form of separation from God. Ibn Arabi's portrayal of the barzakh encourages us to reflect on the impermanence of our worldly existence. It is a reminder that our actions in this life have lasting consequences, shaping not only our present but our future, both in this world and in the next. In the barzakh, the soul experiences the reflection of its life's journey, learning and evolving until it is ready for the final reunion with God. Death as an awakening, a call to spiritual purity. In his writings, Ibn Arabi often emphasized that death, when understood properly, is not merely a physical event, but a spiritual awakening. He described death as a door through which the soul enters into a deeper understanding of itself and of God. For Ibn Arabi, the death of the body is symbolic of the death of the nafs, ego, the lower self, the shedding of the false self that keeps us separated from God. By contemplating death, we are invited to look beyond the distractions of the material world and focus on the eternal truths. It is through the process of spiritual death, the letting go of our attachments to the physical world, that we can truly experience life in its fullest, most divine form. In this sense, death becomes a transformative tool, helping us shed the veils that obscure our connection to the divine. Ibn Arabi's teachings suggest that the true death is not in the moment the body ceases to function, but in the moments when we consciously let go of our attachments and illusions. The more we detach ourselves from the nafs and worldly desires, the more we experience a type of spiritual death while still alive. This is the death that the mystic strives for, a death to the self, which allows for a rebirth into a higher spiritual state. The soul's final journey, union with God. Ultimately, Ibn Arabi's vision of death is that of a journey toward union with God. He viewed death as the final step in the soul's long journey of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. For Ibn Arabi, the goal of life is to recognize the divine within ourselves and the world around us. And death is the moment when the soul experiences God in a direct, unmediated way. Ibn Arabi believed that death is not an end to consciousness, but rather the beginning of a more profound awareness. In death, the soul is no longer veiled by the body, and it sees clearly the light of the divine, which was always present but hidden behind the illusion of separation. In the afterlife, the soul is fully aware of its true nature and its connection to God, free from the limitations of the physical realm. This final reunion with God is not a distant promise of the afterlife, but something that can be experienced in the present moment. Ibn Arabi's mystical teachings suggest that the more we align ourselves with the divine in life, the more we can experience this divine reality before death comes. The soul, in its highest form, is always connected to God, and through spiritual practices such as meditation, prayer, and self-purification, we can begin to experience this connection even while living. Death is not to be feared, but understood. One of the most striking aspects of Ibn Arabi's teachings on death is his insistence that death is not something to be feared. In fact, for those who have understood the nature of life and death, there is no fear at all. He wrote, "For the one who understands the true nature of death, there is no fear, only the joy of returning home." Death, according to Ibn Arabi, is merely the soul's return to the divine, a return that is longed for by the soul itself. The fear of death arises only when we are overly attached to the physical body and the material world. When we recognize that the soul is eternal and that our true nature is divine, death becomes a release rather than a loss. It is a release from the limitations of the body and the worldly attachments that bind us. This perspective invites us to reconsider how we live our lives. If we understand that death is a return to the divine, we are less likely to live in fear or denial of it. Instead, we can focus on living a life of purpose, of spiritual awakening, and of service to others, knowing that death is not the end, but a continuation of the journey. The role of love and devotion in the afterlife. Ibn Arabi also spoke about the role of love in the soul's journey after death. For him, love was the driving force behind the soul's evolution, both in this world and the next. Love is the flame that burns away the nafs, allowing the soul to return to its original state of purity, he said. In the afterlife, love for God is what guides the soul to its final union with the divine. This love, cultivated in life through devotion, prayer, and acts of kindness, becomes the bridge between the soul and God. For Ibn Arabi, love is the essence of creation, and it is love that leads the soul home. The deeper the soul's connection to love, the love for God, for humanity, and for the divine presence within all things, the more easily it will transition from this life to the next. The soul that is filled with love is not burdened by the fear of death, for it knows that love will guide it through the transition and into the eternal presence of God. Conclusion: death is not the end, but the beginning. Through the teachings of Ibn Arabi, we come to understand that death is not a terrifying final event, but a natural and inevitable part of the soul's journey. It is a return to the source, a reunion with the divine, and a continuation of the soul's eternal existence. By understanding death in this way, we are invited to live more fully, more consciously, and with greater devotion to the divine. Ibn Arabi's perspective encourages us to view death as a transformation rather than a termination. It is a call to let go of our attachments to the temporary and to remember that our true nature is eternal, ever connected to the divine. As we live our lives with this understanding, we can walk the path toward death not with fear, but with grace, knowing that it is not an end, but a glorious return to the source of all being.